This is Reverend Peter Desmond Kelly, and I've been in contact now with Charmian Redwood on a number of occasions. We've had some difficulty technically, which often happens when you're in this field with all the energy and everything else that's happening. So not to mention the fact that there's a heavy use on the internet presently. So if this works, God willing, you're going to have this show all ready for you. So first of all, getting back to you, Charmian, I first saw you on the Moore Show, which is a show that talks about channeling primarily, people who are in the field of energy and light workers and such. And I was totally intrigued by about you at the time, because you seemed so natural and calm, and you were without any pretense whatsoever. It was amazing. And then when you spoke about how you had met Jesus while you were experiencing a near-death experience, which was what, 30, 40 years ago, that's what got me hooked and wanting to know more and more about you and the work that you do. And I wonder if you can tell the viewers a little bit about how this new vocation all began for you and what you've been doing ever since.
Absolutely, and I'd like to thank you, Reverend Peter, for inviting me to be on your show today. It's a great honor. And I remember when my near-death experience was, because it was the birth of my twins, and they will be 40 in June, so it's almost 40 years. And it was an instant awakening for me. Up until that time, I was a very normal person. I was a school teacher. I had a career plan. I was buying a house. I was a really normal, ordinary person. And what happened after the birth, which went horribly wrong, I gave birth to twins. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But what happened from that experience was I was rushed back to hospital with very severe blood poisoning. And I had this experience of just lifting up out of my body, and I'm floating over the bed, looking down at that body that is on the bed, excuse me, knowing that that is not me, because I am the one that's looking down. So I realized very clearly the body is just the house that I live in, but I is something extremely much bigger than that, very much bigger than that. So I began to float away. I was drifting away. There was no fear whatsoever. I didn't know where I was going, but I just knew that there were angels there. And up until that time, I had not been a religious person, really wouldn't have spoken in terms of angels. But when this was happening, I just knew that angels were kind of lifting me and helping me. So I kept floating away, and then I floated into this field of golden light. It unfolded me. And everything that you could ever want was in the golden light. And I just knew, this is who I am, this is where I came from, this is where I belong, and this is where I want to be. And everything down there that body is doing, which is not who I am, is just a story that I am making up. So it was very peaceful. You could just stay forever in that golden light and know that I'm home now. So as I was just floating there, blissful, Jesus appeared in front of me, not like we see him, Jesus the man, but as his light essence. So his body was glowing white light, and his heart was this blazing blue star. and I could just feel his eyes just looking at me with complete acceptance, love, forgiveness, no judgment at all. I was the one that was looking back over my life thinking, oh, that wasn't a good idea. I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't done that. He just looked at me with unconditional love, like, don't even worry about it. So we had this conversation telepathically in my head. And he said to me, because your heart is pure, if you want to, you can stay with us in the golden light. Yay. But we're asking you, would you go back? Because the world needs your love, your wisdom, and your healing. Well, the time I didn't really have much of any of that because I was just a really normal person. But I said to him, how can I go back down there knowing that this is where I belong with you? So he broke a little piece of his blue star, a point, and he put it into my heart. And he said, now you will know that I am always with you. So the next minute, I'm floating over that bed again in the hospital, looking down at the house, at the body. And I knew very clearly, if I get back into that, which is not me, I will take on suffering. If I stay out in the light with them, I will never suffer again. But I'd just given birth to these two little souls, these little beautiful babies. There was no way I was leaving my babies without a mother. So I came back for them, really. And then everything that I had done with my life up until that time was completely meaningless. The career plan, the buying the house, mortgage, the home, setting up some secure kind of material existence, utterly meaningless. I just wanted to get back to that place that I'd come from. And I knew there was a plan for this earth, a divine plan. I didn't know what it was. I do now, I didn't then. I just said, wherever you need me to be, let me know and I will go. So I've pretty much been moving and traveling for 37 years. And then I said, and I want a way to take people to have this experience of themselves as the oneness without having to go through all the drama that I went through. So I just, over the years, I developed this way of using hypnotherapy for me to guide the person into a theta, into a trance state, so that they can be lifted out of the physical body and to experience the wholeness of themselves. And people say, when I say, what does that feel like? They say it's peaceful, it's free, there's no goal, there's nothing to do, and they feel completely empowered. So now that has been my mission and my purpose, to teach classes online and to do these hypnotherapy sessions so that people can experience themselves as divine and then take back their power and start creating the life that they want it to be, not what anybody else wants for them or them to be like.
And that excuse me, but I'm just thinking as you were speaking there, that seems to be extremely pertinent at this time. I mean, what with the coronavirus and all the panic that's going on, panic buying at the supermarkets, there's no more toilet paper. I mean, people are just going nuts. And it's like they're filled with fear and panic. And what you're speaking about, though, is, I think, a way to connect with your inner spirit, your inner temple, and to become more empowered with that connection with the higher spirit. Now,
absolutely. You see, my own life, that experience was my turning around point where literally my world was stopped. Okay. And when I came back, I was not the person that I was when I left. So the same thing is happening now on a global level,
Mhm.
because we cannot continue to live on the
Yeah,
earth
yeah.
the way we have been doing. People are heartbroken, you know, when we look at them from above, which is in my work, we go and see the big picture and then we look down. People are just lost. They're wandering around blindly, knowing
Mm,
there's something
mm,
missing. They don't know what it is. So now this virus is actually giving us the opportunity to say, well, what is important in my life? Is it the job, the mortgage, the building up the retirement, or is it the love? Is it people and the animals and the planet that are sustaining me? It's about just opening your heart, and that's what being a real human is
mm.
being the love that you really are.
Well, that's a theme that I think is a paramount force that is embedded in all of your work. I've seen many of your videos, YouTube, on the coronavirus. You're also talking about how St. Michael can help to empower people to help lift their spirits so that they're elevated to a place that they're not as affected or not pulled down by the heaviness and the negativity of this lower vibration. Um, and I think that what I saw in your video was a better understanding for people about the pandemic in terms of not only how they can protect themselves, but also how it all lies into or ties into the divine plan, the evolution of Mother Earth and ascension. Perhaps
Yes.
you could tell us a little bit about the process of channeling that you use. I believe you refer to it as a full body channeling. Uh, Compared to, let's say, between you and other channelers, what is the differentiation here for you? Distinction.
Well, I think because I had that experience where I
Mm-hmm.
went into the world, when I came back, I had this connection. So for 40 years, I've been developing and strengthening the connection with all of the masters, all of the angels, because to me, they're my family. They are my world. And so what they're doing now is that they are really present on the earth because they know that this shift that is happening on this planet affects the whole of creation. It affects the whole universe because the earth is the lowest frequency energy of all of the planets and the stars and the planes of existence. So when we raise the frequency of the earth, then everything can go up one. So I just, when I came back and I offered myself as a vehicle to be used for the ascension process, that I spend so much of my time connecting to the other planes, either through my sessions, through my classes, or through my channeling, that now it's very easy for me to go on to the other planes. So I can now do it with my eyes open. In the beginning, I didn't. I had to close my eyes, go spend a long time preparing. Now it's like they're just waiting and they're there all the time. And so I just ask who wants to come and what do you want to say,
Right, I
and they say.
understand. And so, I mean, that's how I can see with you. And I think I've heard you explain it on the Moore show that for you, with the full body channeling, you don't have to switch. It's not visible. It's not necessarily, there might be maybe a little subtle change in your body posture and your voice. It just seemed to get a little bit more, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but there does seem to be something discernible there. it's not really obvious. And so I think that the viewers need to be aware of the fact that because, I mean, you've been doing this for 40 years, it's like, you know, looking at the back of your hand. I mean, it's so seamless that you can go right from Charmian Redwood to whoever it is you're channeling. And today you're channeling Master Jesus, which I'm so thankful about. And as are many of the people that I've been asking. I put out a feeler on Facebook over the past week, and I think it was Monday I started on my Facebook page, and I've had close to 320 comments. And basically, the question that I asked, if you had a question for Jesus, what would it be? And at first, people were giving, you know, kind of wisecrack remarks, and if he was real, or, you know, is he really, you know, someone that we should believe in? And there was all kinds of wisecracks. But then finally, I've got to give it to my wife. She started the ball rolling. Sylvie started the ball rolling and asked a legitimate question. And then once that started, we got some very interesting questions. And not just, you know, the trivial types of questions. I'm not saying it's trivial for that person, but I'm just saying in terms of the bigger picture, there were a lot of quite deep and profound questions, which I am so looking forward to hearing what Jesus has to say. I just wanted to ask you, before we proceed to that part of the interview and the questions, do you want to pause for a moment? Because I think you mentioned before the show that you have a bit of a throat problem, and I want to make sure that you're okay to continue. We've got a good, I don't know, 45 minutes left, so, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. You don't want to risk turning off the recording. That's happened before. Okay. All right, folks.
And one thing you say, this illness that has been going around the planet, this coronavirus, it's meant to put us down, to make us slow down, to make us stay home. So I actually caught this cold 7 weeks ago before the coronavirus came to America. And then it went into a sinus infection. And I got a real clear message from my guides that they wanted me out of action. They wanted me to cleanse, to fast, to be quiet, be still, to go through an upgrade, a recalibration. And so this is part of the purpose for the coronavirus, is that we are all being recalibrated so that we can hold the frequency. It's all about vibration. It's all about frequency. This planet is being prepared to do an extremely accelerated evolution from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. And this is, at the moment, it's still very much in transition. We're going up, down, there's peaks, there's spikes. So everybody is being asked to prepare the physical vehicle by doing cleansing, doing purification. So this virus is an opportunity for all of us to cleanse and purify our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical body.
Okay, so for the majority, that would probably be the message. However, sadly, or perhaps this is the divine plan, some of us will leave this earth, this plane, as a result of having gotten sick from the coronavirus. Would you say that that's because they aren't meant to proceed further in this plane, that it's just, you know, their time is up, they're not strong enough to continue physically? What happens to these people? This is an interesting question. These people who are not surviving, and we're talking like, you know, large numbers of people, being compared to the Spanish influenza, which affected about 30% of the entire globe. What happens to these people that die from this?
Well, that's the thing is, coronavirus, in terms of the number of lives that are being lost, is actually pretty small. It's not a punishment, and it's not because they were weak. It's because they wrote in their script that I am going to leave through this coronavirus. And the reason for that was they volunteered themselves as souls, that this virus was part of the plan to get the world's attention. And it begins by fear, making people afraid, so they stop, they listen, they reevaluate, and they recalibrate. So some souls needed to leave in order for the rest of us to really pay attention to what's going on. So they are just going home now. They're not waiting to ascend with the physical body, which most of the rest of us are. Those people, especially the older souls and these little children that are coming in that are such high vibration, they have chosen to stay with the earth to ascend in the physical body. And this is why this transformation is so different to the cycles that we've had in the past. When the earth has gone through an upgrade, normally most people would die and then they would come back at the higher frequency. The experiment and the plan that is unfolding on the earth right now is that we are actually transforming this physical body so that it can hold all of the light of our essence and still stay in the physical form. And that is why we are all here. It's why there are so many people on the planet right now, because pretty much everyone who's ever been here wants to be back for the grand finale. And all of these new children, the crystalline children, are here because they're already holding the vibration that we are going into.
So much to talk about. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do want to ask some questions from all of these people that have asked me to ask you these questions. You did talk about, you used one term a few moments ago, the experiment. I mean, we could go on into a whole discussion on that because, I have images of a laboratory and there's so many types of theories about aliens coming to Earth and experimenting in different kinds of gray people and what have you. I mean, it's quite a plethora of imagination that people have, but that we'll leave that maybe for another talk. Let's now go to channeling Jesus. Sorry.
That kind of experiment is a complete violation of human free will and is in no way acceptable. We're talking more about an agreement on the soul level, on the master planes, that humanity as a whole race would experience this raising of the physical vessel to hold the light.
Okay, I'm glad that you clarified that. Would you ask Master Jesus if he could join us? I'd be really honored to have him.
I felt him come in when I was answering that last question, because what he demonstrated in the resurrection, and this was the purpose of his physical incarnation, was not the crucifixion. It was to demonstrate that the physical body is not who we are and that we can raise our vibration. So in his 3 days when he was in the tomb, he metamorphosized his body from physical into a light vessel. So when he appeared, when he came out of the tomb, he was in a much higher frequency state, so he could manifest his body at will, and he could move to teleport wherever he chose. And so the people who saw him afterwards saw him as a radiant light being, not the physical vessel that he was before. And this is why he came, was to demonstrate resurrection, so that we can follow in his footsteps. And at that time, 2,000 years ago, the earth was not ready to hear that message. So he came to plant the seed of Christ consciousness. We, 2,000 years later, it had to wait for the age of Aquarius, because now the consciousness on the planet is such that we are now ready to take that step as a race, not as one person, but as an entire human race, into self-realization, which is what Aquarius is. It's every being in physical form being completely self-realized, reconnected to their own divine essence, and controlling their own lives under the divine will. So he was the seed, we are the blossoming of the tree. And that is why he's coming back now through so many people to give these messages. And this is the true meaning of the second coming. He is not coming back in physical form.
You're answering. Okay, you are answering actually a lot of the questions right now, as you'll see in a moment.